don't know if you've heard any of them, but you're absolutely right. So here they come. They're starting to come on board. So this is going to be a good turnout for you today. Hello.
Right.
Hi,
Hey, everybody.
gang. Good to see you. All right. Well, you know what, Rita Hart? Why don't we just jump on in and get this party started?
All right, let's do it.
Rita Hart is chair of the Iowa Democratic Party. She's a former Eastern Iowa State Senator and the party's 22 nominee for Congress in Iowa's 2nd District, where, by the way,
2020.
isn't that what I said? Excuse me. Anyway.
2022, I think you said, but okay.
Oh, sorry, 2020. Anyway, if there's anyone who understands the importance of the saying, every vote counts, it's Rita Hart, because she lost that election by just 6 votes in what was one of the closest House races in U.S. history. Rita's a retired teacher and a family farmer who lives near DeWitt in Clinton County, which is about, 45 miles from the Quad Cities. She was elected the state party chair, which I might add is a thankless job, I'm sure, in 2023 after serving on the 2018 Democratic ticket for lieutenant governor, where you and Fred Hubble came pretty darn close to winning, but close doesn't count in this day and age. So we want to hear from Rita Hart today about how the Iowa Democratic Party of today is different from what it's been in the past, and how she sees folks winning on her side of the aisle. So Rita, welcome to this group. I'm so glad to have you.
Absolutely happy to be here. Thanks a lot for the invitation, Julie.
Yeah.
And thanks to everybody who's here.
So you've got a bunch of folks on the call, including Richard Bender. I see Richard Bender going incognito there in the lower right-hand Hollywood square box under the name of Laura Foreman, which is his wife's name. But don't be fooled. It's Richard Bender. We came up with a great idea for the Iowa caucuses, and I expect that topic will come up as well. So tell us a little bit about you. How did that near miss in that congressional race shape how you see your job as state party chair?
Well, I tell folks that that was a learning experience for me about the IDP because, my political life has been as a candidate and as a state senator. And I also after I went through the congressional race, I became the Clinton County Party chair, and I'm still the Clinton County Party chair. And so I didn't really know a lot about how the IDP operated, and I just expected them, to be there, right, and to do all the things that we depend on them to do. And so after going through that experience in 2020, it was pretty clear that there was a difference between the kind of organizational structure and the resources, the ability to communicate. There was just so many differences between what our campaign was able to get done with the IDP and what Marionette Miller Meeks got to count on from the Iowa Republican Party. And it took our campaign so much longer and so much, it took a lot. And even with what we had to do with the national party was just a lot different. And so after I took some time, but then after 2022's election, it was clear to me that we had to strengthen the party itself if we're going to get people to get across the finish line. We've had so many really close races over the last few cycles. And we as you said earlier, close isn't good enough. We've got to get them across the finish line. So I've been very focused on strengthening the party itself. And I kind of joke about that as I go across the state and talking to folks that we were all so disappointed after 2022, right? And we were all searching for answers on what were we going to do different, how are we going to turn this around. I think we were all feeling that way. So I joke, I say, and so just like you all thought, well, what do I want to do? I think I'll become the chair of the Democratic Party.
Great.
And I always get the same reaction, right? No, nobody wanted to take on that job because they knew, what a big job it was, and it takes so much to, figure out what to do next. But I got a lot of, I guess you call it encouragement, a lot of pushing, a lot of shoving, a lot of cajoling. And so we had some great conversations. And through that process, people said, Rita, if you will run, I will do this, right? I'll step up in this way. And so I held them to task on that. And that's what I think it was so important was that through that process, I realized that I wasn't the only one who thought this way about strengthening the Iowa Democratic Party, and that it was going to take a lot of people bringing their skills and talents to the table, because it takes so many different kinds of skill sets to strengthen a state party operation. And it was clear to me that there was a lot of things that were kind of low bar that could be done to improve things. And so I held people to that. I came back and said, okay, here I am. I need some help. Will you step up and do this? And everyone jumped in, right? And as a result, over a 3-year time period, we've got the party on a strong financial front. We were able to pay off our debt. We went from 2.5 staffers to now 10 staffers. And of course, we're adding a lot more as we get into the coordinated campaign. We're thinking long term, we're thinking year round, every year kind of organizing, which hasn't been going on. It took a while because I didn't have the capacity at first, but it was very clear to me from the beginning that we needed to strengthen our county party organization. That, as we all know, that most of our counties are very rural counties, and that is where we were struggling with the rural vote. So it's my belief that in order to turn that around, we've got to strengthen those county parties. And I felt like many of them, and I hear the complaints today, many of them feel like they are left out, and that and therefore they were withering on the vine. And I was surprised to find out that, well, one of the first things I did was to ask for a list of all the county party chairs, and they couldn't provide that for me because they didn't have it.
What?
And yeah, just didn't have it. and
No.
so, and so that just indicates, what the problem was, right? And it is hard to maintain that because they change, they fluctuate. But it was a symptom of the bigger problem that there's not enough connection between the state party and the county parties. And so again, I couldn't, get after that right away because there was so many other bigger things that had to be put into place, like staff. But today we're at 99 counties. We had 99 counties participate in the caucuses, and we are building that process. And former chairs are telling me it's been a long, long time since we've had all 99 counties up and operating. And the other thing is that the structure of the state central committee process, that was, very problematic, lots of infighting, lots of dissatisfaction there. And that took a lot of, listening and getting in there and talking to folks and finding out what we can do to get people on the same page. And I am happy to tell you that we have a central committee now that works well together, and we're still in process, but we've really come a long ways in turning that board from a board where people show up 4 times a year just to kind of hear what's going on and kind of complain about what they think should be going on. And instead, they're taking an active role and being part of the process to improve things. And it's a working board that is really making a difference. And so I'm really happy to be working with all those folks. And I think good things are taking place as a result.
How's candidate recruitment going on? I'm not sure what the filing deadlines are, but do you have any seats open that need to have candidates fill them, or I've been surprised
Yeah.
in the past how that seemed to not be paid attention to is to fill those slots.
Yeah, well, again, it wasn't clear whose job it was to recruit for what, right? So, that's really important that we have a process on that. But I think the proof is in the pudding. I don't know what you think, Julie, but I think we have tremendous candidates this time. At the Liberty and Justice Banquet, I said we've got the strongest slate of candidates that we've had in a generation, and I truly believe that. And many of them are younger, which is a great sign for our future, right? And they are very diversified. There's a lot of difference between those candidates. So I think that the recruiting has gone really well this year. We did put a lot of effort into it. For example, after the last election, I called every person who ran for office and talked to them about what their experience was like so we could learn from that. And then was lucky to be able, my whole purpose in calling them was to just hear from them how their process went, but also to thank them because it is hard to run for office these days. So I really want them to understand that I know and we all know that it's hard and that they have to sacrifice a lot and that we appreciate it because without good candidates we're lost, right? I think a good candidate is 50% of the battle, if not more. And so we had those conversations, and many of them volunteered that they would be running again. And those that said I won't be running again, maybe because of age, maybe because of their personal situations, talk to them about them helping recruit the next candidate, right? And so as a result, I think, we are ahead of the game on recruiting. And I'm not telling you that all the slots are filled because again, we've got it's hard to get people to step up, and we've got some tough races out there that make it harder for people to think they have a chance. But overall, we have done a I think that our candidates are very strong. We've got a lot of candidates, and I think again that says two things. It says that people recognize how important this is, and that everybody's got to do something. And if they're the kind of person that could be a good candidate, they have been willing to step up. And we're going to fill in the blanks as we go. The deadlines are coming up now, closer, but we're recruiting candidates every day. And again, I just couldn't be happier with the quality of candidates and the number of candidates that are stepping up.
So on this call, we have people from Decorah, Burlington, Northwest Iowa, Southwest Iowa. We have members of the Iowa Writers Collaborative, Laura Bellin, Chuck Offenberger, Bob Leonard. And I'm first going to go to the members of the collaborative to ask you questions. And we will start with Chuck because that's a little tradition I have. Chuck Offenberger, I don't know where you are, Doug Burns, and then Laura. Chuck, are you around? I don't see you. Maybe you disappeared. Okay, Doug, let's go with you until Chuck re-emerges.
Rita, thanks for being on the call, first of all, and taking your time to be with us. When I hear Democrats talk about many Democrats talk about the future of the Iowa caucuses, they engage in something I'll call sacrificial altruism, where they say, "Oh, we're too white, we're too rural, we've had it, it's time to move on." And I'm just wondering, we could have a field in 2028 of potentially 20 Democratic presidential candidates. Why not just damn the torpedoes and say we're going first? We're statutorily obligated to go first. We're going to go first, accept whatever the penalties are, and we'll let these candidates make a value judgment on whether they want to play in Iowa or not. Let's let their campaigns, the candidates themselves, make that decision, and then we'll see how it goes for 2032. But it out here, where it's in a more red area, I mean, the sacrificial altruism, it looks weak to a lot of independents and Republicans and others. Why not just like Jeff Coffin would probably just say, screw it and go first? Why not?
Let me just say before you answer, Richard Bender, be sure and turn your microphone on because you've got to get involved in this since you thought up the caucuses in the first place decades ago. We had
Yeah,
to
that's
blame or
right.
thank. Rita,
Yeah,
go ahead.
yeah, that's right. Well, I appreciate the question, Doug. I appreciate the flavor of the questioning, right? So that this is it's an issue that a lot of people feel very passionate about, right? And it's why, I've said from the very beginning, we're going to do what's best for Iowa, right? And I would tell you that I have a little different philosophy than Jeff Kaufman does about how to lead and how to get a consensus around things so that you're more successful. And so that's why we did the survey across the state, and we did that online. But we also, we did 23 or I forget how many events across the state for our regional fundraising events, and we had conversations at every one of those, and we got back much what I was hearing from folks, and that is that we're not all on the same page. Some people are very passionate on the way you presented it there, that damn the torpedoes, we're going in, and others are very much thinking, this is a waste of our time and energy, and we should give somebody else a shot, right? But through that survey process, I think it's very clear that people do understand that there are a lot of reasons why Iowa deserves to be in that first slot, and how, in my view, that if we are in that first slot, that's going to be good for the nation. It's going to be good for Democrats. And it just doesn't make sense that we would allow the Republicans, to your point, when we're going to have this many Democrats, this many candidates coming into the state on both sides of the aisle, that we would allow the Republicans to, soak up all the airwaves and have that conversation, and that the Democrats wouldn't have any pushback when we're not first in the nation as well. So we're going through the process now. And we have petitioned, and I know this is not shocking to you that we don't have a lot of control over what the DNC does on this issue, but we're keeping our options open. And we're going through this process. We've applied, and now we'll be giving a presentation here over the summer. I am very much in belief that we have a good shot at being first in the nation again, and that as we look at the practical nature of what this looks like and what has happened in the past, because I do think that it hurt us last time as a party across the country to not have been able to push back while the Republicans were in here having a heyday. And so we've been able to make that point with the DNC, and we'll see how that process flies. But I want to make sure that people understand that the thing that we can do that is going to make the biggest difference to Iowa in general, and the biggest difference as far as Democrats' opportunities in 28, is to win some elections here in 26. If we can flip this state, if we can get more purple, if we can add some wins in the Democratic column here in Iowa, that is going to prove exactly what we need to say about the presidential. And that is that if you can win here in Iowa, you can win anywhere in the country. And so it's really crucial to us that we work hard and make sure that we win some elections here in 26.
Let's see what Richard Bender has to say.
Oh, no.
Oh.
I've got to leave soon, Julie. I'm so sorry.
All right. We'll get Richard after you. Go.
I completely agree with, if Democrats don't win any elections in 2026, why would the DNC start the process here? I mean, honestly, there is no reason for them to do that if we can't demonstrate that we're a purple state. But the question I wanted to ask was, I know there were some Democrats involved in recruiting Wade Dooley, a farmer in Marshall County, to run for Iowa Secretary of Agriculture. And I would like to know, Rita, were you one of the people involved in those conversations trying to find a farmer so that Chris Jones wouldn't be the only Democratic candidate for Secretary of Agriculture?
I would tell you that I was very anxious to get a candidate for Secretary of Ag. And we had had many, many conversations with folks that I thought maybe were going to run and then did not end up running. And so we were looking for a candidate. I did not know that Chris Jones was going to be throwing his hat in the ring. And so that kind of all happened at the same time. But as you know, Laura, I think it's really, actually, I'm pretty pleased that we've got two candidates like this that are going to be able to talk about the water quality issue. For one, it's really going to put some emphasis on that issue, which I think so many people care really passionately about and should, because it's affecting all of us. So it's going to be great to have that conversation. And we'll see what people think as far as the two different approaches there. And so that's, again, I know that it's really important that as the chair of the party that we're pretty new, that we are neutral on the primary candidates, and that we are encouraging everyone to run and provide them with the resources that they need to get their message out there.
Follow up, Laura?
No, that's okay. I'll let other people ask questions. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Richard Bender, I just want to pull you in for your brief comment for the caucus.
Well, I think it's pretty clear that the Republicans being the first and our not being first is a structural disadvantage for us. Two, I certainly agree with Rita that for the DNC to seriously consider us, we need some victories in real races, in serious, important races in 2026. I believe it's very, very likely that we will win in the first and third CDs, some chance in the second. And I think there's a growing likelihood that we might have a real shot at the U.S. Senate seat. And I also am optimistic about the governorship. So I think we may be more positive in what the DNC is going to say about Iowa's role, but there, as we all know, there is some very, very strong opposition within the DNC about Iowa being first for a variety of reasons, which I think we're all familiar with, and I won't go into. But I would say if the DNC is not supportive of Iowa, the possibility of Iowa going first on our own is something the DNC really can't do anything about. I mean, they cannot recognize us and therefore deny us some portion of our delegates. That's been done in the past, but the delegates seated is really not really the question. The question is, what helps us win elections? And that would be going first. And I think for us to go first, it doesn't make any sense unless some candidates actually come here. But I think it behooves candidates to come here, perhaps not the one who's viewed as number one, but if you're in number 3, 4, 5, and 6, to not take the advantage of all of the huge press corps that are here for the Republicans and come into the state and do events. So if I'm a candidate for president, I may not say I'm going to campaign in Iowa. I may not do that, but I may come and say, well, I am going to go and support the wonderful candidate that the Democrats have for this legislative position, this congressional position, to support the X, Y, and Z county parties at their fundraisers. And while they're there, they will, of course, spout all the reasons why they are a very good candidate for president. And frankly, there's zero things that the DNC can do to damage those candidates who play that game. And they will play that game.
Absolutely.
So I think it's worth a shot.
Okay, thank you so much, Richard. And by the way, if there are any national press people who listen to this podcast, you have Richard Bender to thank for the complicated formula that is known as the Iowa caucus. So for the Democratic Party anyway. Barry Pyatt, did you have a question? Barry Pyatt's a member of the Iowa Writers Collaborative as well, covering the Iowa delegation in Congress. Barry?
Yeah, thank you, Julie. My question is about state party messaging. I don't know if you read my Substack column this past week, but I think that the Supreme Court, on its tariff ruling, handed Democrats in Iowa a huge issue that it's going to be very difficult for Iowa's Republican delegation to defend against. When you read their reasoning for overturning Trump's tariffs, what you get as a bottom line is that this Republican Supreme Court says, I mean, don't take my word for it, take the Republican majority Supreme Court, that those who supported Trump's tariffs betrayed the Constitution because they were unconstitutional. Those tariffs wrecked farm markets important to Iowa. I mean, we haven't sold any soybeans to China, since those tariffs went into place. And according to the Supreme Court, they backed a huge tax increase. And all 4 Iowans in the House voted for all of that as recently as earlier this month. And so I don't think that is a message that the state party ought to be leaving up to individual candidates, although individual candidates can sure, hammer it home too. But that's the kind, I mean, you have an opportunity here with 3 huge issues to hammer it home across the board while these other candidates are sorting out their primaries.
Couldn't agree more, Barry. And the IDP has been going after those candidates, making those very same points. We're also, working hard because we know that that in order to reach voters and to reach people, to get them to understand these issues, that we've got to tell some stories. And so we did 2 press conferences last week where we had actual farmers talking about, how this is affecting the farm economy and their farm businesses specifically. And so we're going to keep pounding that message home, because I think you're exactly right. They should be held accountable for the fact that they are voting against the interests of their home state, and they should be held accountable for that.
Yeah, and they're voting against what they say they're for.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you, Barry. If you have anything else, just let me know. But Rita, I'd like to talk about voter registration in Iowa. I think there's approximately 49 million Democrats registered. Correct me if I'm wrong, Laura Bellin. And no, I'm sorry, 2.1 million registered voters who are Democrats in Iowa and 2.4 million Republicans. So how does the party intend to even those numbers? How do you go about registering voters and maintaining voter rolls when some are trying to purge voters at the same time?
Yeah. First of all, I would say that I don't think those numbers are quite accurate, Julie, but maybe somebody can correct those in the chat.
Laura will, I'm sure. Laura.
So, but your point is well taken. We are at a voter registration disadvantage. There's no doubt about that. And so that is a concern. And I know that people are, they look at that and they wonder, how can we win? But the reality is that voter registration is a lagging indicator. And what it's indicating is that we've lost so many election cycles. And so, as a result, people are not only have they oftentimes got involved in primaries on the other side, so they've changed their voter registration, or just the popularity because we have been losing. There's all those psychological factors, there's those are the reasons why we are lagging. But the other big reason is that we have not done a good job of collecting the independent voter who then gets involved in a primary and switches to the other side, right? So our task is to get people to vote for Democrats, and it's not a state like we don't have the advantage that Stacey Abrams had, in that we have hundreds of thousands of unregistered voters just waiting there to be registered to vote for us. That is not the case in Iowa. We have a very high voter registration and voter participation rate in the state of Iowa, and that's a good thing. But what we've got to do is convince folks to vote for Democrats, and we haven't been doing a good job of that. And there's lots of reasons why, not all our fault. Some of it is the national messaging. Some of it is the fact that we've got this populist president that has activated some voters who don't usually vote, and have especially been effective in our rural areas. So again, it's an effort that says we've got to be more hands-on. We've got to get out there and talk to more people and get them to understand, first of all, that this state has been under Republican control for 10 years and it's going in the wrong direction, that their lives are not better, that the economy, we're 49th in economic growth, 48th in personal income growth, that we're operating on a negative budget at the State House, that our education system has slipped from number 5 down to 24 or 28 or whatever number you want to look at. We're not going in the right direction, and we are number 1 in cancer rates. And folks are having trouble at the grocery store making ends meet. They're losing their health care. They're losing their rural hospitals. There's so many things that people are being affected by, that we've got to get out and have those kinds of conversations so that people can understand that one party rule is not working out for us, that we need to get some ability to work across the aisle, and that Democrats, it's time for a change. Let's vote Democrat.
So Laura Bellin did correct the record on the total number of Republicans registered. It's 776,000. And the Democratic number, Laura, I don't see it.
That's about 590.
Okay, all right.
So they're about 180,000 ahead, roughly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, thank you, Laura. So you've got a candidate running for governor who's making some loyal Democrats a little uncomfortable by slamming the Democratic Party and going after independent voters. And do you have a comment about that or a concern about that?
Well, again, we've got a long history, I think, in the Democratic Party of shooting ourselves in the foot. And I think that I like to tell people that we're not going to ever have a perfect candidate. There's never going to be a candidate that you're going to love everything about them. But we've got to have candidates that are running under the Democratic ticket and are talking about the issues that really matter to folks and are resonating with the people out there. And so you've got to take the entire candidate. And right now, I think it's so important that we recognize that people are looking for authenticity. That's what seems to be a driving factor, that people are not so hung up on, do I agree with everything that this candidate is talking about? But is this a candidate that is speaking to truth? Is this a candidate who has the kind of background and the kind of the resume that tells us that they understand what public service is all about and that their priorities are straight? Is this somebody that I can trust to shoot from the hip and tell me how they really think? And therefore, I can, even if I disagree with them, that I can appreciate them, that I can respect them, and that they are going to actually work on my behalf. And so that's what I like to see in our candidates. And I think that people have to recognize that Again, we have got to run candidates that are going to resonate with the folks that are going to be voting this time around.
I oftentimes use a magic wand. I bestow on one of my guests a magic wand, and I will give you my magic wand for the purpose of this discussion. Let's say you magically had an infusion of $1 million into the party you hadn't thought was coming. What would you do with it?
I think it's very clear that we cannot spend enough money on organizing, right? And that's what I am raising money for right now. The more money I can raise now, the more organizers we will have on the ground. And I'm hoping to have 60 or more on the ground, but before the end of the primary. And then we need to make sure that those organizers are trained in relational kinds of organizing, and we have to have a strong connection with our county parties so that our volunteers are also being trained in that same vein. So and if I had that extra $1 million, I would make sure that we are setting things up so that we have year-round organizing from now on. That's so crucial. I think it's something that we haven't been able to do and could make such a huge difference for the good of the party and for the ability for us to win some elections.
Okay, Richard Bender, you had.
I really believe that, obviously message, quality candidates, all crucial needs, but GOTV is absolutely essential. And I think in recent decades, we really haven't had a statewide solid GOTV operation. I would point out that I remember my last cycle, 1974, which goes back a while, we had 100 paid field staff, to give you a comparative number. And I also want to stress that there's an over tendency to focus on, the large counties, and frankly, nearly ignore the more rural places. Relatively small efforts to try to generate local organizational capacity in those small counties does not take a huge amount of effort, and it is really crucial to having at least some effort that can really per hour of effort, per dollar of effort, give you a much bigger bang for the buck. Part of the reason that we are so low in Democratic support in rural counties is we've just given up trying to get out the vote. And you'll look at some of those places and the gross turnout levels are quite low. And they're quite low because the Democrats just aren't being motivated to show up.
Okay, thanks, Richard.
Can I comment on that quick, Julie?
Sure.
You're preaching to the choir here, Richard. I totally agree with that. I've been working really hard at that. And the proof is in the pudding. We just had our caucuses, and the best percentage of turnout was in the rural counties, not in the urban counties. And that is going to be crucial to our victories here in 26. It's so important that every rural county knows that what they do is going to make a big difference in the grand scheme of things. So totally agree.
Great. Thanks. I'm going to do as much bopping around here and get representatives from other parts of the state in the conversation. Tim Wagner up in Decorah, what's your take? Do you have a question or a comment for Rita Hart?
Sure, Julie. Thank you. Yeah, getting back to the issue of Rob Sands not doing some of the Democrats' favors with some of his stated positions. I've been pretty vocal here in his backyard about that very thing. And I use it as an example of, as Laura so well reported yesterday in her column about the majority in the legislature are now really working overtime to rig the system. So if Rob does get elected, they're going to do everything they can to hamstring him going into his next year. and going into his first term. And I guess what concerns me is when Rob does these things, and I support him, but when he says these things that can hurt the Democratic label, I mean, let's face it. I've talked to Republican voters who simply will say, I wouldn't vote for a Democrat even if my Republican candidate had 4 eyes and 3 arms. And, there's this false narrative out there that if you're a Democrat, well, you're just not going to get my support. And Rob's going to need every Democratic candidate winning up and down the ticket, from the bottom all the way up to the very top, if he's going to be successful. And it bothers me to see him try to draw that distance. I understand politically, from a campaign perspective, why he's doing it. I completely get it. But like I said, he's going to need all those Democrats to be successful that are running in order for him to be successful if he does get elected.
Okay, thanks. Rita, you can follow up, or I can go to Martha Wolf. You pick.
I would just say yes. That's again, it's a situation where we've got to run candidates that people recognize as being authentic. And I was very pleased that Rob Sands started this campaign the way he did, and did these 100 town halls across the state. And I would tell you that kind of is telling us what needs to happen here going forward, because he only gained momentum as he went through those 100 town halls. They were very well attended, and well attended by Democrats, Republicans, and independents. I mean, many more, not that many Republicans, but some. And that's the kind of campaign that's going to continue to grow. And as he has those events, and he's going to have another 100 in the general, again, we're going to create that kind of momentum. And I'm hearing what you're saying, Tim, from Republicans who are telling me that I don't think we have a chance. And it's great to see the Republican primary really struggling right now. That is a mess over on the Republican side. So we've got to just be united and make sure that we get some Democrats elected in the fall, up and down the ticket.
Martha, tell us what's going on in Southeast Iowa and from your perspective.
Well, our philosophy is that we have these 6,000 plus from a voter list that we got from the Secretary of State. And I just feel like it's easier to get somebody who's voted before to vote again than it is to get a new voter to the polls.
Yeah, are you saying these are 6,000 that were purged from the voter rolls?
Right, 2020, 2024. And so that's who we're going after. We're identifying if they're dead or if they've moved, and they'll get a text or a postcard from us informing them that they have been purged and showing them how to re-register. And as Susan mentioned, we also are being at the library monthly, twice a month, to register new voters. But it's like when I had a restaurant, it was easier to keep a loyal customer than it is to go out and try and find a new one. So, and it's working.
Julie, I just so hate to tell you this, but for some reason the fire department's in my driveway. So I gotta go find out why.
Oh, okay.
So
Well, we'll keep
back.
chatting. All right. Well,
Okay.
this is the first. Well, we got to keep going because we got to find out what the hell's going on with the fire department. Hey, Chuck, well, what question were you going to ask?
I don't know what to say. I missed my chance earlier, but I had a mouthful of salad, so I spared everybody that view. First of all, I am hereby joining the Doug Burns and Richard Binder ticket of Iowa first in the nation presidentially, and the hell with everybody else. Let's go. I'm ready to do that. Secondly, I think Rob Sand is the best positioned Democratic candidate I've seen in a couple of decades, probably. I mean, just on all issues and how he meets the public, all parties, both parties, independents. I was in one of his town halls in Jefferson, and he just was amazing in the grip he had on everybody in that room. Third, and Rita needs to be on to hear this, but I'm sure it'll get conveyed to her. she and other top level Democrats have got to quit overusing the word. There she is. She's back. Rita,
Yep.
um,
Oh, yeah.
Chuck Offenberger here. I said, this is one you have to address. You and other top Democrats have to stop overusing the word folks.
Oh,
Folks. It just gives me the scrunchies. And as I think it's the same for a lot of rural Iowans out here. I mean, if someone from Washington, D.C. calls us folks, we kind of get it. We'll let them do that. But if it's you or Tom Vilsack or Fred Hubble or other people here in Iowa referring to Iowans as folks, it just doesn't work. So now what the hell happened with the fire department?
Yeah, no kidding.
I don't know, they were going up this hill outside of my window and I seen backing up and I just, wasn't paying attention. So anyway, their fuel pump locked up. And so they got it into our driveway and now they just want to let me know that it's sitting there and the tow truck is going to come and get it. So
I think we can headline this, "You saved them."
oh
Well,
God.
thanks for all your work, and that's all I can add today for all you folks.
I don't think you were
Okay.
kidding. Were you? You weren't kidding, were you, Chuck?
About what?
No, he's
Why
not
do you
kidding.
care
No.
about the word folks? Why does that bother you?
It sounds inauthentic.
Well, what if it isn't?
Well, let's just say, do you hear Republican candidates calling Iowans folks?
I guess I haven't thought about it.
Well, take notice. It's
Okay.
a it's a tricky little thing, but it's there.
Okay. All
It's
right.
like, Julie, you know this from you and I agree on this one.
Plethora.
Plethora. When Mike Franken started using the word plethora in his campaign appearances, I said, this is big trouble.
Okay. Well, what word should they use instead of folks? Iowans?
Names,
Name.
people.
Okay.
Chuck, I'll tell you this really quick story because one very impressive thing that happened to me. I went to a little league game, and their turn there it was almost a brawl because some kid got called out and he should have been safe, whatever, and the crowd got really upset about it. And this was a little league game, just little kids out there playing. And one of the fathers stood up in the crowd and said, folks, 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 calm down. This is America. We're watching baseball. It's a time, and calmed everybody down. And I always remember that whenever I hear the word folks, I think it's a endearing term that kind of puts us all at the same level. But I hear what you're saying, Chuck, and I know that everybody has a different kind of background and understanding of the nuances behind words.
Nice.
Well, I
Nice.
appreciate your work, Rita. Thank you.
Nicely handled. And just chuckling, thinking, oh my God, the chair of the Iowa Democratic Party has to hear from all of us, complaining about this and that. And here, I've never heard you sound so passionate, Chuck, about the use of the word folks, but duly noted. God, I wonder if I do that. Anyway, I think that's funny. But he doesn't. And he must get that all the time. People have things that you think they think you should be doing or should not be doing. Is there anything in the frequently asked complaint department that you get regularly that would be nice to kind of get out in the open here and address?
I think we've already kind of touched on things. I mean, people have really strong opinions about the caucuses and what we should be doing about them, and it is across the board. We're definitely, I think that was why it was great to do that survey so we could really get some feedback. And one thing that I didn't talk about with that is that people are very passionate about the accessibility aspect of that.
Yeah.
That if we're going to have the caucuses, that they need to be more accessible. And I think there's a way to do that, and that could be a game changer for us on that. And then the other thing is, I get a lot of calls, especially through this primary season, because we've had such great candidates, and people are very passionate about those candidates, and we've got some primaries that have been particularly contentious, right? Because we've got good candidates going up against each other. So I'll get a call saying, look, we got these two great candidates and one of them should run for something else. So can't you talk this one into running for this other thing? And, I always say to them, like, that's not the way it ought to work, right? I'm not a party boss. That's why we're Democrats. We want people to, we want the people to make the decision. So you wouldn't want me to, have that kind of approach. I have conversations with candidates all the time, and we talk about what's best for them and what's best for the party. But in the end, we want a party that where people make their own decisions and that the folks at the top aren't putting their thumb on it.
Said the folks word.
Oh,
You
sorry.
See,
this is kind of the way I talk, Chuck. I'm sorry.
That's funny. All right, let's see. Ralph Rosenberg, you have your hand up. And then I have a couple final questions for you.
Thank you. Picking up on the Burns Offenberger proposal, but with the Bellin caveat. the Bender, whatever, Bender Burns are right. It's a good idea, but Bellin is right that the leadership in DC will push back. So as long as people prepare for that pushback, we may have a chance to attract people. I'm just like any institution, they're going to try to control things. And Laura suggested they're going to keep people out of the debates if they think they're playing around in Iowa. I think we can deal with that. Second
and
thing,
I would tell you that the candidates aren't listening to that. They are coming here. They are showing up.
I know. I'm just
so many.
Rita's right. I'm just worried. I think Laura's right that people will overreact because I'm worried about that. But interesting to talk about boss. I grew up under Mayor Daley before I moved to Iowa. I know what boss Democrats are like. But one of the things that I have two millennial sons, and I sometimes go to their birthday parties. And these are people that know that I was a Democrat candidate, elected official, appointee. They're really discouraged and they need issues raised. So when Tim Wagner talks about Rob's positioning, I understand Rob not taking strong positions, but my millennial sons and their friends are looking for something.
Yep.
And I really think there's ways to deal with it without compromising election. Other states, and I'll close with this, what other states, red states do is that legislators, including legislators running for higher office, which we have, push specific bills and or amendments, not because they're going to meet or pass, but the amendments and bills highlight what Trump is doing to their congressional districts or the state. And it doesn't cost anything for our elected officials to push that, to support everybody, but also to highlight what Trump is doing and remind people, like what you talk about in the pressers, what's happening to the farmers, SNAP, closing of rural hospitals. But we will need our elected Democrats to keep those issues in front of us, because I want my millennial sons to stay in Iowa, but he's going to leave. So thanks, Rita.
You bet. Thank you, Ralph.
Two final questions, Rita, unless somebody has their hand up and I'm not seeing it. But number one, you look around this Hollywood squares of folks on this call, and we hit, I think we had 50 on the call, and we're all of a certain age. I don't see anybody under the age of 30, I don't think, on this call. So we have yet to really discuss how reaching people has changed. There's just, you look at the New York mayor's race, and Mandami was, doing stuff on TikTok and all of these things. But he also was passionate and created this incredible following because of his authenticity and his willingness to speak to issues. How is the party mechanism addressing the changing ways people communicate and get their information?
Yeah, I think we have learned a lot about that over the last few cycles. And, I think back to when I first started running for state senate and how all politics seemed much more local then. You could be much more successful. In fact, we talked about that, about how you find a candidate that is well known in the area, and people will vote across party lines if they know that person and respect that person and feel like they can trust that person, right? But that has really been dumped on its head as we have got fewer and fewer local news. People are not all tuning into the same message all the time. They're getting it from all different places. And now all of a sudden the national news has taken priority over the local. Most people know more about the national news now than they do about what's going on in their own backyard. And that really is a challenge. And so we've had to, and I would tell you that it's also much more expensive, right? It takes a lot, it takes money to get that message out, and you've got to hit it on all fronts. You know, you got to cover the news, you got to get it into the newspapers, but you also have to do it on Twitter and on YouTube and on Blue Sky. And there's just, so we've got to first of all have staff that really understands that, and that and have a strategy that can be effective in where we put our money and how much money we put where. It is a difficult science, and that's why I'm pleased that I have. Again, when I started 3 years ago, I had very little in the way of a comms department, but now we have a strong comms department, and I'm thinking that as we go through this campaign cycle, we're going to strengthen that even more. But it takes a lot of effort and a lot of money to do this well.
What are the lessons for you in the special election results recently in Iowa that have surprised people, that Democrats outperformed expectations considerably?
Yeah.
What's your takeaway from that?
I think that we have a lot to be proud of here, because we were the first special election after Donald Trump was elected to flip a seat in 25, and at the end of 25 we were the last special election to flip a seat, and we got tons of national attention on that. Now, I would tell you that the first one, Mike Zimmer, here in my old Senate seat, that took a lot of effort, and we got a lot of national attention on it. But the story that came out of that, was not quite the story that it should have been, because they tried to make it look like, oh, people are souring on Trump already, right? And that's causing Iowa to be able to flip a seat. Well, I don't think that was the case at all. I think the case was that we got ahead of that, and we put the energy and the effort into it. And we had a candidate that I had been recruiting for over 2 years already, and a terrific candidate, as we have all seen, that now he's a terrific state senator. So to start with a good candidate who is ready to go, and then to put the money and the effort and the organization into winning that seat and being smart about how you run that campaign. And I would tell you too that the Republicans have been doing us a bit of a favor, because their central committees are very, very far to the right. And so the candidates that they put up tend to not jive with the average Republican in any given district. When they are in a special election, it's different. The central committees determine who the candidate is. But we have to have the kind of organization to flip those seats. And so we were able to do that in, 5 different special elections across the state. And we got a lot of national attention, and rightly so, because that's what we've got to do to win in 26. Run great candidates, be adequately funded, and have the kind of organization that gets those candidates across the finish line.
Okay. Well, Rita, thank you very much for your time. So appreciate you being with us and taking the time out of your day to have this kind of conversation. Great questions, great dialogue, and come back one of these days soon.
Yeah, it was a great conversation. I want to thank all of you. I admire all of you who are doing this hard work of communicating across the state. It's so important. And Julie, really appreciate your efforts here.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And we'll do this again soon.
Okay. All right.
Take care.
Thanks, folks.
Bye-bye. I'm looking for the chat to save the chat. Why can't I save the chat? Where is the chat? There we go. Save chat. Okay, got it. Bye, everybody.